the world, let's chat it up. We're talking competitions, uniforms, and all of the above. It's the Cheer Mom, yes, the Cheer Mom podcast. Cheer Mom, yes, the Cheer Mom podcast. Cheer Moms, your podcast is on.
Happy New Year, everyone. Do you remember when you were a kid and you went to the water park and you went down a water slide and you thought it was going to be really fun? And it was, until you got to the very end, like the very bottom, and you either got like a face full of water or the biggest wedgie of your life, or your swimsuit would even fall off. All of those things haven't happened to me. What? That's what I feel like cheer does for us, or does to us in January. It's like we're trying to recover from the holidays. New year, new you, blah, blah, blah. We just did our like refresh. We took all of our Christmas decorations down, and then bam, we're like a blink away from traveling around the country and big cheer competitions. It's not fair. I know that nobody did this on purpose, and it's not fair for the kids too, because unless they're super diligent, which athletes you need to be, over any kind of break that they have with like working out and stretching, they're walking into practice 10 days before a nationals event, like out of shape. It's not fair. It's not right. Like we gotta get with it. Speaking of which, speaking of getting with it, we're back to 2 episodes a week. Mondays and Thursdays are the goal. I'm still trying to be consistent, but you will get 2 episodes a week. The goal is for you to have something to listen to while you're on your way to said travel competition. And speaking of travel competitions, a lot of times we go to those events for the experience, of course, and I hope that you are focused on the joy of the experience. We get to go to some pretty cool cities in cheerleading. And if you find yourself going to Atlanta or Dallas or Orlando or Indianapolis, I've actually created a blog post, or written a blog post about your guide to nationals competitions and what to expect at each large competition. And I will link that in the show notes. It includes things you can do around the city. I personally loved the Coca-Cola Museum in Atlanta. Who doesn't love like free samples of Coca-Cola? I love it. You get to taste Coca-Cola from around the country. And I think they took that attraction out of Epcot. They used to have it at Epcot too, at Disney, but I don't think it's there anymore. If it is, I skip it because I can always do it in Atlanta in February. All right, but speaking of large nationals competitions, today's episode is all about the summit. The creator of the summit, Damianne, was kind enough to spend some time with me along with my new BFF, Justin Carrier, and answer some questions that I had and that you have had about all things the summit. I really wanted to know their thoughts on currently the junior 6 level teams, the few that there are. The junior 6 level teams compete at the summit and not at the cheerleading worlds. And I want to know like what the thought process is behind that. And they tell me about that, which was super interesting. I asked why the youth division was taken out of the summit, and then the youth summit was then created. And I asked them the things that you guys are asking all of the time, like the summit used to be a really exclusive event, and now it feels like they are handing out bids like crazy. The wild card round and how to make sure that quote unquote the right teams make it to finals. I know that there have been scenarios where parents have complained that, hey, like we had a higher score in the wild card round than such and such team in the finals round, but we didn't make it past the wild card round, and that's not fair. How is that fair? And so Justin and Damianne talk about that. Here's the thing. I've been to Summit recently, but I haven't had an athlete compete at Summit in a very long time. There have been a lot of changes since she competed at the Summit. But when we were trying to get a bid to the summit. And if you don't know what a bid is, I will link all about bids, that blog post in the show notes. Also, when we were trying to get a bid, it felt like the bid to the summit was the only thing that freaking mattered. And it really upset and frustrated me. There are more people that feel that way now, but 10 years ago, I was in the minority. And, my opinion is sort of like, I'm kind of glad that they're handing out more bids, because then it becomes more about enjoying the season. I'm recording this way after the fact, so I don't remember what Justin and Damianne said, but it just depends on your perspective, right? So it's really cool to be able to compete at ESPN Wide World of Sports. It's cool to have the honor and prestige of getting a summit bid. Not everybody does get a summit bid, but let's keep our eye on the important things, and that's like the journey and the process and enjoying every moment that you have on the mat and every moment that you get to enjoy seeing your child on the mat. So without further ado, I want to say one more thing. In the last couple of years, Varsity has created a summit mascot named Summy. And I have some thoughts on Summy, and we kick that right off at the top of the conversation. So here's my fun chat with Damianne and my new BFF, Justin, with Varsity All Star. This episode of the Cheer Mom podcast is brought to you by all of our new favorite sock company, Apollo. You may have seen them at a recent cheer event, and they are changing the game for cheer athletes, coaches, and even cheer moms. Listen to more of the episode to learn more and find out how you can get 10% off of your order. Okay, so we have some breaking news, and you have something that you'd like to clear up, because when I heard this news, I immediately reached out and I was like, Justin, I know that you wouldn't lie to me. What did I misunderstand from our last conversation about NCAA is not going anywhere?
Kristen, at the time that you interviewed me, I was telling the truth. Kristen called me and she's like, "Is that why you put it this way? Because you were leaving it?" I was like, "No, I'm legit." But we were returning to Dallas and I was excited about it. And I still love Dallas. But since we recorded the interview, the plans did change. And the convention center changed its plans, its construction timeline. And basically it came back to us and said, we don't have enough space for that huge competition. And so then we started scurrying, trying to figure out what we're going to do in 2026. And then right after that is when our podcast aired. And I'd actually forgotten that we had talked about it. And so when I listened to our podcast, I was like, oh, I'm going to have to correct the record on that. So anyway, I apologize. I wasn't lying to you. I wasn't even being creative in what words I used to give me an out to change the plans. It's just what happened.
I believe you. I would believe anything you told me, Justin Carrier. Really. Okay. I really would. Welcome back, Justin, but welcome, Damianne. I am so excited I have to tell you, the first time that my daughter competed at the summit when she was younger, I looked around with mouth agape, literally, and my eyes wide and going, who did this? This is incredible. I want to talk to the creative mind that was able to make this such a big deal in the cheer world, and dream come true. Here you are. Thank you for being here and talking to me.
Thank you. But we definitely have a lot of people that are responsible for that. So I appreciate the accolades there, but it takes an entire village, and we have an amazing team from the ops side to the sales side to the customer experience team that does so much. And especially our registration team, because they do get to spend a lot of time with the parents that get to register for Summit. So kudos to them, because I know they get a lot of interaction with the parents for that event, unlike a lot of our other All-Star events. So
I like how you say they get interaction. They get interaction.
They're very privileged. They are very blessed to be able to get interaction with parents. Yes.
Okay. I like it. First things first. I've got to ask, because this is a new element that you've added to the summit, and that's Summy, and Summy creeps me out. So change my mind.
Kristen, it sounds
Oh,
like
Justin's going to take this one.
Yeah. It sounds like you have childhood trauma that is unresolved, first of all, because Sami is very nice. You spent any amount of time with him. He's warm. Even his tongue, I think, is shaped like a heart.
Yeah.
I don't know how much more love you could get. If he were to lick you, it would be like showing you love. I'm guessing that you have an unhealthy relationship with most mascots because there's just no way that you look at Sami and feel anything but love and adoration. How's that?
You could be right. I will talk
I mean,
to my
we could set up.
therapist
We
the
can
next
set
time
up
I
some
see him.
time. We can set up some time. Maybe we could bring somebody to the podcast at Summit.
Kristen, we can do a photo shoot with the two of you, and you can
Yes.
plaster it all over your social media. How's that?
The first look.
I'll consider it. No licking. He's got to buy me dinner first, at least.
It's
I
been cool though.
did-
The kids love Sami.
Yeah.
The kids way more than when we started talking about building Sami, I was like, we don't need a mascot. These are all-star kids. They don't care about
We're
mascots.
serious people. We don't need a mascot.
No, apparently we do, because those kids will knock you down to get to Sami.
Yeah.
Okay, does Sami go to both the summit and the youth summit and the D2 summit, all three of them?
And Dance Summit.
Yep.
And
Yes.
the dance summit. Sorry, we forget about dance. Okay, I went to the youth summit for the first time this past season in Tampa, and I loved what was that, like a igloo themed
Sami's den.
room. Sami's where
Yeah.
Sami hung out it was like an official Disney-esque. You waited in line to take pictures with Sami, and there were lots of people there, and there was like a snow theme, and there were lots of photo ops. I just stood back. I didn't take a picture with Sami. I just was like, I'm just gonna. Maybe I do have some trauma-related things that I need to take care of. I was not interested in taking a picture with Sami. But okay, if you set it up, I will be at Summit again this season, and maybe we can make a TikTok or something. Damianne, let's come to you here because, like I said, it is a huge event. Now it's all of these, four events. And Justin, in our last conversation, you said that the parents made it such a big deal, but it just seems out of the gate. Like everyone was so excited about it. Damianne, what made it such a labor of love for you? Or even if you want to start earlier and say, we need to do something, how did that grow from your perspective and in the conversations you were in?
Yeah, I think we all appreciate Worlds and the talent that's at Worlds. And I think it is undeniable that the absolute cultivation of our sport. And I think as a parent, you want to see your child happy and successful. And that's what every parent's goal is, right? You do those things, you make things happen for your children. I think for Summit, a large portion of our industry is level 1 through 4 and the lower levels 5 and 6 and those younger athletes. It is a huge part of the majority of our sport. And there's some athletes that will never see that world stage. They just are either coming into the sport late, they physically are just not at that ability. And I think what Summit did is it created an opportunity and a stage to celebrate that level of athlete. That may be their worlds. That may be their peak of their time. They may never get past level 2. And so I think what it did is it just created that opportunity. And then from the parent standpoint, it really let your kids shine on that stage. And you got to see your child with another level of happiness that you just don't see on the regional level, right? You get to walk in there. I remember vividly that first year we had Summit, and you've always only seen them at the time, the milk house, as the milk house with the castle in the background and usually the UCA or the World's logo. And so I remember walking in at the top level, and I don't remember which arena it was called at that point, but walking in and seeing the mountains and seeing those colors there. And it was just like that moment of, oh my God, it's happening. And the pride. And I try to remember to sit back and watch those athletes. And I'll tell you, it was funny because it was awkward because I think one of those rotations was senior level 1 going opposite panels of restricted 5 or something. And it was like, we're watching level 5 and then all of a sudden you see backwalkers. But they were the best backwalkers in the country. And it was the best backwalkers we've seen. And if you guys remember, that senior level 1 division is fierce and it is so competitive and it's been that way. And I think it was just so cool to watch that grow. And we had some programs that didn't attend the first year. And I think as it's progressed, people have seen that it is a place for them to get out of their region and truly compete against not only now the best in the country, but the best in the world with adding those international divisions. And we get to pull that into one place and get to enjoy it.
That's a really interesting point. It's funny that you say the milk house, and all of these buildings have changed names so many times. Justin, I think you and I were messaging during this year's summit, and you're like, I'm at HP. And I was like, don't you mean the State Farm?
I tell anybody I accidentally called it HP.
We all call it whatever it stuck in our minds as. And anyway, so that's interesting because I think that my daughter started in All Star Cheer, I think the first or the second year of the summit. So I wasn't really sure what it was all about. So what did teams do to celebrate or even like work toward the end of their season if they weren't a world's team before the summit?
Let me answer this because I was a detractor of the summit, mostly because in my experience up to that point, NCAA was the end all be all. And I was specifically concerned. And by the way, I felt the same way about when Worlds came around. I was specifically concerned that NCAA would be unseated as the end all be all if it became summit. It was really short sighted of me. I didn't try to thwart the entire process, but I was really concerned that it would overshadow the role that NCAA played in the industry. But really, it back then, our market was much more regional. People stayed in their region to compete. Yes, people flew to NCAA, but more or less there were these more pockets. Cheer sport was big, but even Texas team, Southwest didn't go to cheer sport. Cheer sport was very Southeast and Northeast, and so. The summit, while the end of the season concept was new at that level, it was really when, in my opinion, when teams started traveling to get to see other teams that they've never seen before.
Interesting. And it's an interesting point that you bring up. NCAA, of course, being so famous and prestigious, and also everybody wants that chance to compete with the castle and behind them and to have that kind of feel. And I remember being there and saying, yeah, we're gonna go compete in Orlando, and everyone's, oh, you mean at that stage where they have the cheerleaders and the castle that you see on TV? And we all know that the real answer to that is no, but to our friends that don't know the difference, we're like, yeah, the one you see on TV, we're going to the summit. But
which
now
is funny because we got on TV.
Yeah.
We did. We got on the TV, which was there's been so many moments throughout the years, right? We're in the process of celebrating the 10-year anniversaries of each of them. We had the summit, the dance summit celebrated theirs. This year is the 10th year of the D2 summit. So we're in these milestone years of the brand. And it's just been so cool to have been part of something. I've been a part of a few things from the beginning, but really this is one that I've had a lot of ownership in from the very beginning. And to watch kids and even people that work with us now. We've got some staff that work with us now that were athletes that never made it to Worlds, or some that did, and you still see them as they know their moments there. They just as equally important as their NCAA moments and their Worlds moments. So that's been cool.
This episode of the Cheer Mom podcast is brought to you by Apollo Performance Socks. This one is for the team reps and the coaches. Listen up. Apollo Performance Socks are a secret weapon for your athletes. I know that team reps and coaches are always looking for ways to help athletes perform at their best, stay healthy, and even just fun gifts. These socks, I know it sounds strange, but these socks are a must-have. They provide support, stability, and comfort our cheer athletes need to tumble, stunt, and jump with less pain. They can even replace bulky leg braces and even look good with uniforms because of their neutral colors and sleek style. Trust me, your cheer athletes and their feet will thank you. Visit apolloperformance.com and use code CHEERMOM2024 for 10% off your order. That's APOLLA performance.com and use code CHEERMOM2024 for 10% off. I absolutely love callbacks, or what they call Easter eggs. You know, those little, if you know moments in movies and remakes and songs. And the cheer world has so many little things like that that are important to us, that are just specific to us. Things like hit 0 and 2 minutes and 30 seconds, not to mention the letters that are so important to teams and programs. I don't know a program that doesn't have some version of this. You know what I mean? Like G3FCA2A, OAFAAF, SE4L. You get it, right? That's why I started TCC Jewelry. At tccjewelry.com, we don't just sell jewelry, we create conversation starters, from bracelets to rings and necklaces for all ages and sizes, and even custom designs for teams and programs. TCC has you covered. There's even opportunity for fundraising and kickbacks for gyms. So basically, we want to make you look good and help you get to your nationals events. Whether you're a cheer parent, an athlete, or just a fan of looking amazing, TCC Jewelry is your go-to. Check it out at tccjewelry.com and enter code CheerMomPod for 15% off of your order. So let's talk about the youth division. A lot of changes have come over the last few years in the youth division specifically. Can you talk about that process and why the youth division was ultimately is not part of the summit, and then why you added a youth summit?
So there's a few reasons. One of the reasons that really started the conversation was really program owner driven and coach driven. Is the parents, as we said earlier, the parents were the ones that were going, we want to go. And what they were seeing is, I don't want to take my youth team every year, and there's an expense to that, and it burns them out as they're going, and once they start going when they're on youth 2, are they going to want to go when they're on senior level 6? And so it started those conversations, and unfortunately, those conversations were happening in 19 and then little did we know in 20, COVID hit. So I think the timing, had it happened and COVID not happened, I think it maybe would have made more sense to people. But I think what happened was COVID, everything got taken away. So then when we continued forward with that decision, it probably looked like we were taking something away rather than just following through on things that were already in motion for very genuine reasons. The second part is, and this is how I personally feel, is you've been to the youth summit, so you've seen it, but what other event did they get to be the stars of the event? And they're the highest level that's competing, and they're the star of the show when they enter that stage. And I think that is the coolest thing, to be able to go there, and there's no waiting around to watch the junior team or waiting around to watch the senior team. Instead, they're going to come and watch them. And there is no next level team or next highest age group team going in the performance order. And I just think that is such a cool aspect. And then Summy obviously coming in, being able to cater some of the experience to them and their age group. They get to be kids, and we're expecting them to go on stage and perform like adults or perform at this older kind of presence on stage, but yet they get to go and we get to see them in their real true environment with their age group. And I think it's just such a cool thing to step back and watch and be able to cater an event that is so special to them in their own environment.
Yeah, I love that. And I love the feel of the youth summit. It's got the same prestige, it's got the same seriousness, but for some reason it just feels a little more chill, a little more fun. What do you attribute that to?
I think it's the purity of having youth kids at the youth age. They know nothing else but to love what they're doing.
Yeah.
And it's just exciting for them. Their attitudes are great. After the first youth summit, it was such a special experience. I was really worried that we wouldn't be able to duplicate it in year 2. And then it did get duplicated in year 2. And that's when I figured out it's because it's youth. It's because these kids are excited. When you walk the new youth summit champions down the hallway, the way the other youth kids scream and yell for them is just, it's so sweet. And it's not something you always see at the junior and senior level, but that's just like the perfect age where they just know nothing but the love of the sport.
That's so true. I talked to some coaches of a successful youth team one season, and I said, they just go out there and they're successful time after time and they keep winning time after time. And I said, what is that about? And without hesitating, the coach said, it's just because they're out there having fun. They don't get in their heads about it. They don't second guess themselves. We say, go do this. And they're like, okay. And they do it.
And one thing I hope comes out of it too is I hope that they can keep that love and kind of authenticity of how they feel about the sport as they move up. It gives them it's hopefully creating a different culture, and they're the future of our sport. And the goal is to keep them into the sport and hopefully change. Change comes from within. So if we're not happy with the culture of our sport or the how social media affects it or all the things, what I do hope is that this generation that's coming up through this event can truly see what we're trying to create and be a part of that, and then have it grow as they grow with the sport.
Love that. Okay, let's move to junior teams really quick because I know that this is a controversial thing, and it sounds like by the looks of it, no decision you make will make everyone happy. So with that as our backdrop, you're trying to create this beautiful experience for the youth team so they can have something of their own. And I know that there are parents that are like, what? The youth are just as good as anybody else. And knowing that there are two camps and two sides and two conversations to everything involved in cheerleading. Let's talk about the junior level 6 and whether or not they should be allowed to compete at the cheerleading worlds. Right now they compete at Summit. How do you make that decision?
It's funny you mentioned that because I was actually at Orange Theory where I don't do cheerleading there. I just go there to work out. And a mom, I didn't even know this was coming.
Oh,
She's like,
no.
Justin. I was like, yeah. She's like, why aren't juniors at Worlds? And I was like, oh, hold on.
I'm just here to get
not
my orange
mentally
6.0, time
there.
run.
I appreciate you waiting for a Cheer Mom podcast to pose the question because I was not. And you know what? There are arguments on both sides. I can give you a million reasons why they deserve to be there. I can give you a million reasons why they shouldn't. What is cool about Worlds right now is that you have to be senior age to get there. And there is value in waiting, and then getting that experience as a senior age athlete. Yes, they're very talented. They deserve everybody deserves everything. Everybody works really hard. Everybody works their tail off, and everybody deserves to be at Worlds. But right now the decision isn't to do that. And it isn't an effort to maintain that experience at the senior level. But I think it will continue to keep coming up. There are plenty of reasons why they should be there. It's just not where we are right now. But what we are most concerned with is the longevity of the sport and to keep people working towards a win. If it were up to me, nobody would win NCAA Nationals their first year. It's great that the youth don't get to go to Disney World when they're 5 years old. It is great for Worlds and Summit. It is healthy for junior athletes to have to wait to achieve that. Because a lot of times what happens is when you finally reach that goal, if you are a 9-year-old or 10-year-old at the World Championship when you're 9, and once you can say you've done it all, how much more engaged are you going to want to be before you?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, unless go do it all in another sport. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. No, and as somebody who I think leans toward the side of they deserve to be there, if you can throw a double, shouldn't you be able to be there? I actually appreciate that answer because there has been so much talk about burnout and kids just quitting cheer at 12 and the sport losing so many great athletes because of that. So I can respect and appreciate that the kids have something to work toward at every stage they're at in our sport.
Yeah,
I think it will keep coming up.
Oh yeah.
I'm sorry, go for it, Damianne.
No, I was going to say, and we want to keep them. Yes, they're great athletes, but I think one thing is keeping them in our sport helps develop great humans. And like we have such a good, you see some people, so many athletes come out of cheerleading and talk about the positives, not just on the mat, right? But the things that they get in life and the skill set they get. If they're burning out at our sport at 12, like that's so many years that we don't have that influence on them to be able to create that as a human to get out of that sport and what they do in real life. And sometimes I call it Peter Pan land, but we want to keep them in to be able to have those influences and create and foster those development qualities in getting out of the sport. So I think it's more than just what happens in 2 minutes and 30 seconds and how great of an athlete they are. I think it's important to like realize what the sport can do for your child, not just in that setting.
I tend to agree. And not that there's anything wrong with exploring other interests in high school, but I have seen lots of athletes, whatever reason, leave cheer at junior high and not get into something in school and just end up on a path that was not meant for them. And so I think parents, we can maybe take a step back and get a different lens and look through it at a different perspective, that it's not just about the experience or the right to be somewhere or whatever argument we have as to why our kids should be at a certain level or a certain competition, and think about the long game, which is not always the most fun and exciting thing to think about for a parent, especially a cheer parent. So I appreciate you guys for helping us get there. Why are you laughing?
We'll help you get there.
I'm waiting for Justin's daughter to be a cheerleader. That's what I'm
Parent
waiting for.
experience.
I'll tell you, I have a whole new appreciation for what parents go through on the sideline after having my own kids in sports. You want the world for them, and you want it now, and you want them to have all those opportunities. I always appreciated it, but I can appreciate that request. I get it. I get. There's usually one parent from one gym, from one youth or junior team who will reach out when the NCAA schedule comes out to tell me how hard her daughter has worked to perform in the arena. Everybody's daughter works really hard to perform in the arena.
Let's go back to
But I
Carly
hear you.
being
I
in
know-
cheer. I don't know what the level of interest is, but that little sassy girl would make a really good cheerleader, I can tell.
Yes, she would agree with you.
She would. Justin has no comment.
Tinies end up going the last team of the night when it comes around. All of a sudden, Tinies are stopping going first thing in the morning.
Oh, man. Is she not a morning person?
Yes, she's not a nighttime person.
Oh, okay. Got it. I need to know more of the Carly lore. I'll have to, I don't know, follow you more on social media, more than I already do. I don't know if I can get more creepy about it, Justin. But okay. So keeping on the controversial, kind of hard-hitting question, Damianne, let's talk about the wild card round. And I'm sure you've gotten a lot of, as you say, parent feedback or parent interaction, I think is what you called it. I think the way that I phrased this question originally was, how do you ensure that the right teams advance to final? Like, you don't get to make that decision of how a team does. But let's talk about the wild card, because I hear parents talking about, I don't want to go if we're not going to be part of the quote unquote real competition. And then more than that, even, I see parents saying, we scored higher in the wild card round than this at-large team, or this team that got an at-large bid, did on their first day of competition, but we didn't advance because of XYZ. There's so many different nuances and complications to it. How do you address that? Just educate us more.
Yeah, I think, and you said the word, it's educate, right? I think the wild card round, understanding where the wild card round came from and why it was created, I think is the first step, right?
Yes, please. Yeah.
We started with at-large and paid bids at our 2-day events. And so then it was people, what we called bid chasing, and trying to go and spending all this time and energy and money, to be honest, and not even money just for the event piece, the travel and all the other costs that go into and are associated with traveling to try to chase a bid. And so what we saw was, as it was becoming more successful, we needed more bid opportunities. And in order to do that, we had to add another day or find more space and time in the day and things like that. So we were able to add the Friday in. And in order to do that, trying to find a streamlined way to how do you decide who competes on Friday, who competes on Saturday. And so it was a lot. And so ironically, I love baseball. And the wild card was the teams that were almost there and almost got in. So it was catchy in that spot. Not necessarily the concept in the theory of getting a wild card bid. It's being able to put them at the one-day events that are lower cost events that are spread across the country and make it easier to get there. Some of the other thing we heard was, we don't know if we're going. So they were trying to chase these bids, not able to get them in December, January, February. March is coming around. They're trying to get to Summit. They don't know whether to plan. They don't know whether to buy travel. And so it just created more stress on coaches, on athletes, on parents. And so we were able to look at all of our one-day events and look at a model and a distribution that made sense and it creates a lot of opportunity now. So I think before that kind of leads into probably something else we're going to talk about is the prestige part of it. It doesn't change
Can't
the
win
prestige.
for losing, can you?
Exactly. Trying to make it it's easier to obtain getting there. It doesn't change the journey to get there, and it doesn't change how hard it is when you actually get there. At the end of the day, you still have to hit 2 minutes and 30 seconds on the floor and do your job when you get on the floor to then go against a bunch of teams and that are also there for the same thing. They're all trying to hit. And so that first year we implemented, I was like, God, I just need one team to make it to wild card to make sure that it made sense. And so there was a team out of California, Power, and they competed at one event for varsity. And they didn't go to any other varsity events that year. They competed at an NCAA event, ironically, in Northern California. They went to Summit on the wild card round. They won out of the wild card round. And the first year of wild card, you had to then go, that only got you to Saturday. So then you had to compete in the big pot on Saturday and get out of that again. And they go Sunday. And they did. They won on Friday, they won on Saturday, and they ended up winning on Sunday. And I was like, okay, I felt the sense of relief as that it works. I also have asked periodically the first team knocked out of wild card, would you change it? What would you change? And time over time, I've been told no. They understand what they're getting into when they go into that round. There's less teams coming out of it. And I think and Justin knows, every year we look at the numbers that are coming in, the shifting of the divisions. One year their senior 2 is the big division. The next year it's junior 3. So trying to make rules and adjustments to the round to make it as fair as we can. I'm going to let Justin talk on the scoring piece of it. We do have, I will say this, we get this question a lot, the same panels judge across the event. We really try to do our best. It makes a big puzzle piece. So we really try to make sure that it's fair from start to finish. And we've added the division splits in there now too, to go back to that, to make sure that those divisions get deep. We have parameter to split divisions to make sure that we can really truly get the teams through that need to make it to finals or should be making it to finals.
Only thing I'll add in, a few things to help educate the parents, is we try to keep the same panel, but a different day and a different set of teams means a different set of scores. And our scoring system is not so consistent and standardized that you can compare what happens in one division one day up against another. I know as a parent that makes you feel better, or to know that, oh my gosh, we would have beat them, but it's just not an apples to apples comparison when you try to compare scores across days and panels. So I just wanted to put your mind at ease. And you're right, it's a wild card. It's wild. Like when you sign up for that wild division, that wild round of competition, you are submitting the idea that the playing field is not the same. And it's not a percentage of teams that goes to finals. It's a flat number of 5. So it doesn't matter how big your division is. So it's just a gamble that you take. And a lot of times programs take it strategically because they think it works to their benefit. And a lot of times it's a different customer base because it's a customer base that spends more time at our one-day event.
And Justin, we talked last time about the idea of bid chasing and how Summit became the only important thing, not just the most important, not just the only important thing, but like the only thing. It's what everyone was talking about. Every time they competed, you could win the whole event. And if you didn't get a Summit bid, then it was a failure. And so you've done things to try to mitigate that, create the league, which you're right, people are catching on, people are getting it. But also, Damianne, you mentioned making it a little bit easier to get a bid, and again, can't win for losing. You can't, I feel like I'm in speech and debate all over again, and you have to write the argument and then the counter argument to the same point. So now parents are like, it used to be more prestigious. It used to be the cream of the crop. And their words, not mine, people have said bids are just being handed out like candy. What do you say to that?
And again, it goes back to trying to create a streamlined structure that makes it easy for the athletes, for the parents, for the coaches to be able to pick their path to get there. We went to more of we used to look at events and try to figure out what bids go where and try to be strategic about it. And what we found is we would have a classic event in one region that had this many bids, and then we'd have a classic event just on the other side of a border state that had this many bids. And so they were leaving their own region, costing themselves to travel, paying more money to do that when we could just give that same opportunity within their region. So we went to the tiered system in doing that, it innately grew the number of bids. So it's not necessarily we decided to just gamble and throw all these bids out there to hope we catch the net. It's really just to streamline what's offered at each of our tiered events in each of our regions so that it wasn't forcing a team or a program's hand at where they should go. It's really opening it up to be able to allow teams to choose their own path and what fits with them financially, what fits in their schedule. We have a lot of programs that have teams in the same division or the same level that based off the bid declaration are going to try to have to go to different events. So it just creates more opportunity at the end of the day and trying to alleviate some of the stress in that process. We don't want the journey to be stressful. It's stressful enough to be there. We want them to have an experience and enjoy the ride when they get there. And then truly the competition really is when we get to the summit and what happens there.
I do
And I'll
appreciate
also
that.
throw
Yeah.
in-
Go ahead, Justin.
Here's my 2 cents. Parents tend to think the thing their kids are attending isn't prestigious anymore unless their kids don't make it to that thing. And then they wish, and then they don't have a problem with the prestige. And we have this with former athletes with worlds and stuff. It's not as prestigious as it used to be. It's all based on your perspective. And the truth is making finals at the summit is harder than ever, way harder than ever. And so I don't think the prestige is gone. I think people may feel like they're not as part of an exclusive club that they enjoyed having the bragging rights to be exclusive to. But the prestige of the summit and the way those kids feel when they win the summit is every bit as special as it was in year 1.
Interesting. And I have to say, I have seen what you're talking about with crossing the border to another region to bid chase. It's this gym down the road is competing at this competition, so we're going to avoid them so we can get our bid, and we're going to go fly over here where nobody else is competing, and we're going to get a bid there.
Yeah.
That would drive me crazy.
Yeah, and it's, again, I think sometimes the things we're doing may not have the context around it of why we're making decisions or how things get there. So I appreciate the forum because it really is for the right reasons to make it to where it's less stressful. And like I said, the journey is supposed to be equally as fun as actually getting there. And if we want everybody to be there that wants a shot, because at the end of the day, again, nobody's guaranteed more than 1 2-minute and 30-second performance at the summit, regardless of what type of bid you're on.
I like the word context because there is such a thing as context around every one of these conversations or complaints or what have you. And yeah, I think we do need to remember that there's context. Now, having said that, have you ever considered having some kind of minimum score baseline to receive a bid to make it a little bit more limited, especially in size of divisions?
We've looked at there being a threshold, but again, scores can be inflated or not for different reasons. And no. Worlds has talked about that, or it's been requested. I've actually heard that more as a Worlds request than anything else. And the World scoring especially is so vastly different and flexible that I don't know if that would ever be a consistent way to do it.
Probably because it's, again, that humans judging a live sport, a score in this part of the country at this time of the season might have scored differently in a different part of the country at a different part of the season. Is that fair to say?
And that's the other part of it. There's different talent levels and experience levels in different pockets. And so it's hard to have those eliminating criteria when, I'm not going to use any state as an example, but what's going to go out of one state can be very different than the best to come out of another.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Any other parting thoughts that you would like for parents to know about the summit?
I think for me, it's just you can sit back with everything else that's going on. Sit back, watch your kids and their excitement and their energy and how they feel about it. And I think if they're happy, then that's a win. Regardless of what the placement is, things are coming down to tenths of a point. And I think at the end of the day, we are trying to do our best with continuing to elevate the experience, not just for the athletes on the floor, but for the parents and the spectators that are coming to support. And just try to continue we appreciate feedback. I know I do, but we are every year trying to look at it and go, what can we do better? And know that even if things aren't perfect, there is a team that is sitting there that does nothing but try to make sure that they are doing the absolute best for the athletes and the coaches and the fans and the parents that are there. So a little grace goes a long way. Sometimes I can tell you one thing we cannot control. We cannot control weather, and we cannot control love bugs. So we control a lot of things, but not those two things. So
You guys know that all the Facebook groups about late March, early April are like, hey, how are the love bugs? Are there a lot of love bugs out there right now? It's a whole subject.
I've heard of those Facebook groups. Every once in a while, I get a screenshot from my sister-in-law. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah. Good luck with that.
You're not in the Facebook groups, Justin? Come on.
No.
we are both out.
No. I need serenity.
I think my blood
Damianne,
pressure appreciates me for that.
Yeah, you said you haven't even made it onto most social media. You're better
Nope.
for it.
I have stayed away from TikTok. I have stayed away from Instagram, and I will stick with my old person Facebook and Twitter or X or whatever we call it now.
Or whatever. Yeah, nobody quite knows. Have you guys ever reached out to Miley Cyrus's people and made her the official theme song of the summit?
She was there one year, I think.
She was?
I don't know if she was around during the summit, but she used to compete with Premier Athletics.
Yeah.
And back before she was famous, when we had to get security for Billy Ray Cyrus to come watch his daughter back in 2009, 2008, 7. It was a long time ago, but Billy Ray Cyrus was at our event.
Yeah.
It was after his mullet and before mullets became popular again.
Yeah. Yeah.
But-
wow.
But yeah,
Fun fact. And that's like a great place to stop.
oh my
Mullet-
gosh.
mullet
My
from the
shock
bald guy.
moment. Billy Ray Cyrus. I'm surprised at how much you know about hairstyle history, Justin. Is it?
I'm older than you. I was around for it. I was around for mullets the first time, and I pray to God they are gone the second time before my kids are old enough to request one.
Did you ever have a mullet? You're not old enough to have had a mullet.
I had a rat tail.
Sometimes they were straight, sometimes they were braided. It just depended on your mood, I guess.
Oh gosh, I thought we had a big finale moment, but that was it right there. Thank you both.
What up, party people? This is Jason Larkins, host of the Let's Talk Cheer podcast, and I've teamed up with Kristen Wheeler of the Cheer Mom podcast and Dan Cotton of the Cheer Biz podcast.
That's right. Hey, everybody, Kristen here. We know that you love cheer, so why not dive into more perspectives? Tune into my podcast, the Cheer Mom podcast, for cheer issues spoken from the parent's perspective. Then head over to Dan's podcast, the Cheer Biz podcast, to learn from a gym owner on how to run a successful cheer business. And of course, don't miss the Let's Talk Cheer podcast featuring Jason Larkins, the one that we all know and love, where they talk about cheer from a coach's perspective.
Which means whether you're a coach, a cheer parent, or a gym owner, we've got you covered. Find all 3 podcasts on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and stay tuned for new episodes each week.